more money.
Okay, so with regard to the media, because you've referenced it a few times, one of the criticisms that your book has gotten is that there's so much anecdotal evidence, which is because, as you've stated, it's impossible to find statistics because they don't exist. But I did a little bit of research on the shooting that just happened up in San Francisco, and for the first 2 days of the shooting, the shooter was referred to only by his name of Texas. Francisco Sanchez of Texas.
Yes.
And so I wanted you to talk a little bit about how the media tends to treat these stories when they originally see them.
Oh,
because
yes.
It's amazing.
Well, what's interesting about the San Francisco case is that we did find out, by hook or crook, it was generally mentioned in the articles about Texas Man. It generally was at least mentioned he had already been deported 4 times. In my extensive research, I only found 2 other cases, or 2 cases, and now this one, where we found out very early on that the illegal immigrant who killed an American was an illegal immigrant, though the headline may still have been Texas Man. The other one was the Porky's director, who was driving in Pacific Palisades with his 22-year-old son, and a drunk illegal alien swerved straight into his lane, smashed him, killed him and his son. Immediately, the illegal alien and his passenger were fine. And I thought, there were articles, the LA Times was saying it was an illegal alien. And I, emailed some of my friends in Hollywood and said, why would this come? And I don't know, maybe it's just they considered Porky such a reprehensible movie that anyone who killed the director, it doesn't reflect that badly on the illegal, but that one came out. And the other one happened a year earlier. It was an actress in her West Village apartment, Adrienne Shelley. And she was murdered by an illegal alien, and immediately, as soon as he was arrested a week later, immediately we all knew. And the only thing that separates those cases from most of the cases I write about is that they all happen in places where liberals might be. So I go back to my point that, oh no, the rich are perfectly willing to pay the costs of bringing in peasant cultures. That's because they don't pay the cost. No, they move their maids out to the suburbs. And they come in to clean the house and then go back and fill up your schools and your hospitals and rape your kids.
So in your book, one of the big issues, obviously, that you take on also, aside from the sort of media bias, is the fecklessness of the GOP on this issue. Why do you think that the GOP is pathologically incapable of taking on this issue in any real way?
I used to think it was cowardice. I now think it is pure stupidity. Pure stupidity.
It's a hell of a choice
actually,
there.
I guess, yes, there could be so many things. And actually, if I could just get back to one other thing, the anecdotal examples aren't to prove the point. Chapter 7 is where you'll see, that was the chapter written through tears of frustration and rage, of how I describe, you go looking for basic crime facts. I mean, I think I do have some pretty good facts that aren't anecdotal. The U.S. Marshal's Most Wanted list. Take a look at that one. New York State prisons, they used to count, because again, prisons really do have to know. They may not publish it, but they do have to know the different ethnic groups, because they get into huge gang brawls in the prisons. And so I have the list of where people are from. From the New York prisons. I think that's pretty devastating. The main way I use the anecdotes isn't to prove the point, it's to attack the media. It's just mind-boggling how they hide. I have these, sprinkled throughout the book, these Spot the Immigrant chapters, where I'll give you the mainstream media article and, my comments throughout, and, you're completely convinced that, it's some farm boys up in Fresno who have gang raped these little 14-year-old girls, and only when you read the court transcripts 3 years later, oh my gosh, they're all Hmong. Why couldn't you tell us that? The San Francisco case I mentioned with model immigrant Bali Reddy, Lucky Reddy. That story was never mentioned in the New York Times. Never, never, never. How much ink has the New York Times spent on rapes that didn't happen by the Duke lacrosse team and UVA? How much ink was wasted on Ferguson, where Big Mike did not put his hands up and say, hands up, don't shoot? But actual cases of shocking, heinous gang rapes, incest rapes, child rapes going on in American communities, and for no reason. The media won't tell us about this. The Mexican gang rape case, it's one of the most hideous stories I've ever read. And again, I called my friends who follow not only the news, but crime as much as I do, and they did not know about this case. It started, I think, in the Clinton administration, ended during the Bush administration, and just the ugliest, most shocking gang rape of 2 little girls in Texas, led by an illegal alien. I did a full nexus search. The case went on for about a decade. Never was illegal immigrant or Mexican mentioned in relation to the main gang rapist. And this was the largest number of death penalty cases in Texas, which isn't shy about the death penalty, for about a half century. It was a pretty big case. There was one article in the New York Times about the case, but never did our media mention Mexican immigrant, much less illegal immigrant from Mexico, until they used the fact that the lead rapist was a Mexican to try to spring him from the death penalty. That is the first time 10 years later. And the full description of the first mention I found was, in a Texas case. That's how you're going to describe one of the most brutal gang rapes I've ever read about. So the point of all the anecdotal evidence isn't to prove the crime point, it's to prove our media is shockingly corrupt and lying to you, and you are going to have to demand information about immigration if we're ever going to get it. And back to the stupidity on the Republicans. No, I mean, after the fact that Trump has struck such a chord, do any of them have eyes? Don't they want to win? This is apparently a popular topic. I gave a speech out in Ontario, California last week, and I didn't realize, I mean, you know, they're nice people like you. Some of you might be Cruz supporters. Walker announced today. If any of you are Rubio supporters, we'll have a little chat about that. But I mentioned during the question and answer, I mentioned my fondness for Donald Trump, and the room exploded. They were so happy. It was 100% for Trump. And I mean, I can't say I believe he's going to be the nominee. For those of you who follow my work assiduously, you know that I'm constantly saying Republicans don't get distracted by someone who hasn't been a governor or at least a senator. It's not going to be the nominee. I don't know with Trump. If none of these Republicans pick up on this, it's just wide open there. And I wish, you know, my secret plan, and this comes out in the last chapter of my book. The one guy with a 20-year fantastic record on immigration is Mitt Romney. And I was very disappointed when he criticized Donald Trump, my new hero.
Well, when Romney comes in on the hang glider right into the middle of the race as the 17th candidate on that stage and just bumps Rick Santorum off, it'll be amusing.
I'm thinking people will see that debate and think, oh, man, Romney was the best we ever had it. Maybe he could take Trump as his vice presidential nominee. But look, I mean, if it is Jeb Bush or Rubio, I'm not saying this in an angry or threatening way, you'd have to vote for Rubio, or rather for Hillary, over those two. They are sole objective is Jeb and Rubio, their sole objective is to open the border and pass amnesty. At least with Hillary, she wants to socialize any other industries that haven't been socialized. She wants to lose wars for us abroad. She wants to take your children away, make, you know, abortion mandatory. Gay marriage mandatory, perhaps. There are a lot of items on her agenda. Whereas Jeb and Rubio single-mindedly focused on opening the border and passing amnesty. So if Trump isn't the nominee, I hope he does. I mean, if it's Jeb or Rubio, I hope he does run as a third-party candidate. So there's so I can make it clear what my vote is about.
In 2014, a lot of people voted specifically about this topic, and this was the deciding topic, and I heard a very prominent member of the Wall Street Journal editorial team assure an entire room at least twice this size that that topic was not even at issue in the 2014 election. And the question is, what should Republicans have done? What should they do? Let's say that God forbid, Hillary Clinton wins, or it's somebody else on the Republican side who doesn't care about this issue, but there are people in Congress, let's say Republicans hold Congress. What should they do right now, for example, to stop Barack Obama's executive amnesty that they didn't do at the beginning of the year?
Well, they shouldn't fund it. There's that. But first of all, let's just quickly take the point. What was the 2014 election about? Tom Cotton in Arkansas beat a popular sitting Democratic senator by running against him on Obama's executive amnesty. Ben Sasse in Nebraska took out a field of candidates that I'm sure were very popular with the Wall Street Journal, businessmen who think that, amnesty is a fine idea. Ben Sasse lapped both of them. He got more than the two of them combined. And, of course, there was the famous election of Dave Bratt in Virginia, taking out, for the first time in history, a member of the leadership of Congress. Oh, and I'd also throw in here Scott Brown in Massachusetts, whom, if we were, ranking races by level of difficulty, the rest of them are doing somersaults compared to this guy who has to do, a triple layover, flip off the shallow end of the pool. It was Scott Brown did incredibly well by raising the amnesty issue. It is popular with voters. It is not popular with, unfortunately, most of the people who control the media. And when the defunding of Obama's executive amnesty came up, the Republicans did try to fight it, and the Democrats did filibuster it for 3 weeks. But unless you were reading Breitbart, you didn't know about it. There was just no media attention to it. And now they've betrayed us on trade. My objection to the trade deal is it's a backdoor amnesty. It allows not only the free movement of goods, but the free movement of people. So a company can say, well, I need so many low-wage workers coming in to take these jobs. Republicans have a winning issue here if they would just talk about it. And look, the Ann Coulter rule is there are a lot of bad Republicans. There are no good Democrats. There are a fair number of Republicans in both the House and the Senate who are fantastic on amnesty, and we need to push them and elevate them, and people need to be more like them. And I also think we should take out one. This is what we as voters can do. They should stop being stupid. I think we only need to take out one of these guys, maybe John Boehner, just one of them. And again, as you know, if you assiduously follow my work, I harangued all of you to vote for the Republican, don't go for the Tea Party candidate, because really bad things happen when Democrats control the Congress. But that's why the Bratt thing was fantastic, and a lot of these Tea Party candidates, I'm not even sure I believe half of them, but they're not that good. They haven't run for anything before. We need to find a place where there is a good candidate to challenge a bad Republican. And that, as Voltaire said in Candide, we hang one to encourage the others.
So now I'm going to ask the apocalyptic question, which I know every Republican at this point has felt, which is, okay, what happens if we can't actually do anything? Because it feels like on every front, the President of the United States is doing whatever the hell he wants. There is no rule of law anymore. The Supreme Court obviously does not care about the rule of law. They're doing whatever they please. Congress is willing to abdicate whatever authority it has. They're just handing over the cash. So what do citizens do, and how fast is this going to turn very ugly?
That's a good question. I don't think it will turn any uglier than it is. I just feel like most Americans are hunkered down hoping it will all go away. But it's not going to go away, and the winning path to follow is Pete Wilson in 1994. Look, it's Americans who have shut down 3 amnesties in the last decade. It wasn't because, some major network or newspaper was alerting you to it. The American people would somehow, by hook or crook, find out, oh my gosh, they're doing it again. They're trying to pass an amnesty, and they 3 times now shut down the congressional switchboard. Well, you may have to shut down your newspaper switchboards or your TV network switchboards and make it clear this is what we want to hear about, because this is all that matters in so many ways. And even to the Democrats, I'd say, I mean, I'm assuming this is a Republican audience. That's why I talk about how it is just, it's the end of the Republican Party nationally. We might have a few seats in Montana, Idaho. Are they moving any of the unaccompanied children there? But I mean, the whole country will be California without the beautiful beaches, attractive people. You'll all be the Kardashians. It'll be awful. But this is even if you are a Democrat, this is going to change our country in such a fundamental way. We will be like Brazil. And I think it'll just happen slowly, and you'll wake up one day, and after election, that's we won't even be as good as Mexico, because Mexico has the advantage of living next to the most wealthy country in the world. No, we will be Brazil with a very, very wealthy 10-20%, and a very, very poor 80 or 90%. It's heartbreaking. It's not only the freest country that's ever existed, but what always set America apart, and California, I would say particularly, was our enormous, prosperous middle class. Enormous. I always think that's why my theory of why the ugly American image developed in Europe, because most of the Europeans, most of the people you meet from foreign countries will, fly across an ocean to come to America. We only meet their elites. No, not Americans. Everybody used to travel to Europe. Not now. We're all worried about paying rent, holding on to your job, paying for all of those, special English translators at the schools, paying to support your hospital from going bankrupt. I mean, this is just so crushing to the middle class. But it's good for Mark Zuckerberg. It's good for the rich. It's good for the rich farmers with all that cheap labor because they refuse to mechanize.
So here we are in California, which is, as you mentioned, sort of the bottom of the hill. What exactly are Californians supposed to do? I get this question a lot because we just, for the first time, passed. We are now a plurality Hispanic state, and we are now minority white state, which means that I suppose that pretty soon my kids can apply for affirmative action, which is exciting for the first time.
I don't think it's going to work that way.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It worked for Jews for like this long, and then it was gone. But so, aside from using our lives to serve as a warning for others, what exactly should Californians do at this point?
That's a good question. Wow. Huh.
This is not an encouraging pause.
I'm thinking. Yeah, I think you're just a warning for others. I don't see anything else that can be done. Well, I mean, I suppose, obviously, alert the rest of us where it's still time in the rest of the states, but also, I wonder, my prescriptions for the country, triple layer fence. I want it to be as difficult to get into the United States as it used to be to get out of East Germany. I'm so sick of hearing fences don't work. It's like shoelaces, they just don't work. What? What are you talking about? Of course they were. Yeah, oh, they cannot come untied. I know the human spirit. My long-term plan, which would be fantastic for Israel, is to move them to the northern portion of Mexico. I have a chapter, Why Can't We Have Israel's Policy on Immigration? That's a country that knows how to defend its borders. That would be good for them, good for us, fantastic for us. They'd have us, their biggest, best buddy in the whole world, right next to them on one whole side.
Well, Obama's president, so not for long on that one.
That's right. We have to get rid of the anchor baby policy. I also think we need to repeal. I want it retroactive. Incidentally, in the news all now is this El Chapo, the biggest drug cartel leader. He's in my book. He's married to an anchor baby who a couple of years ago flew back to California to give birth to her own 2 anchor babies. As soon as, at your expense, as soon as she had given birth to her 2 anchor babies, she flew right back to join El Chapo, who replaced, I think, Osama bin Laden on Interpol and the FBI's most wanted list. And, how did he escape from prison? Well, because in Mexico, the cartels own the prisons. Forget California. That's your future, America. So, as I describe in my book, is the anchor baby policy was a footnote in a Justice Brennan opinion in 1982. This does not go back to, the Reconstruction Amendments. The 14th Amendment was about one thing, again, utterly insulting to black Americans. The 14th Amendment, why was that passed? So that someday La Raza could usher across Mexican women who were 8.5 months pregnant. They could drop a baby and say, "Ha, you didn't catch me. I'm an American citizen now." No, people don't put trap doors in a constitution. A secret trap door. Ooh, this will surprise them. To get an amendment passed, you need a mass feeling about a big thing. We had just fought a civil war to force, again, the Democrats to stop enslaving blacks. The 14th Amendment is absolutely exclusively about black Americans. That's what it's about. And by the way, it's not about gay marriage either. But they're at least gay Americans. Here we're talking about people who've never set foot on U.S. soil before, playing a game of Red Rover with our Border Patrol for the most precious possession in the universe, citizenship in this country. No, that is not how you get American citizenship. But Justice Brennan, this only came in 1982. 1982, Justice Brennan slipped it in a footnote of a 1982 opinion. It is utterly outrageous, fraudulent. Judge Richard Posner, whom, as you can attest, very smart, most cited federal judge, not a friend of social conservatives. So this isn't, me speaking. A few years ago, I quote him in the book, he concurred in an immigration opinion for the sole purpose of adding a concurrence that said, "Congress, would you end this anchor baby policy? It's not in the Constitution. Pass a law tomorrow and end it." It's not only got to be ended, but, and this would save California, I want it retroactive. What if we had a mentally delusional Supreme Court justice, not that hard to imagine, who says, all of America, or all of the world is a citizen of America? Are we all going to honor that? Because that's what's happened with the anchor baby policy.
Just make sure Kennedy takes his drugs this morning.
Yes. Yes, what if we had A? I guess that was. So anchor baby policy, the wall. The moratorium. We need a complete immigration moratorium. So this isn't just about Latin America. It isn't just about Mexico. I don't want European immigrants coming. I don't want anybody coming. No marriage. No refugees. No asylees. Just shut it down for 10 years, and you'll see. I explain it toward the end of my book. My original idea was, let's go back to pre-1970 rules and try to get, as I say, people who are better than us, rather than people who are worse than us. But that won't work because we have all these nonprofits. We have hundreds of, ACLU migrant rights groups and George Soros Open Society Institute and La Raza, founded by the Ford Foundation, incidentally, not by Hispanics, like LULAC was. We have hundreds of these groups. I do a paragraph that goes on for a full page of just some of them, and those are all the ones who become the immigration judges. Those are all the ones who work at the INS until they are all out of business and vacationing in, Cuba and fighting with the Tupac Amaru in Peru. Until they are gone, America can't be safe. So we need to just shut down immigration altogether for a decade, dust off the books, assimilate the ones already here, and then we can start it up again totally cheap. I could do it all before breakfast. Just send me the photos. I'd be right 99% of the time. I'd be better than what we're getting now 100% of the time.
Ann Coulter, 11-time New York Times bestselling author. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. What do we do, leave?